In this episode of the Total Survey Design podcast, I'm talking about forcing questions. Specifically, what it means to design a questionnaire where respondents are not allowed to skip questions. While this practice is often assumed to improve data quality, I will talk about why that assumption is usually wrong. I will also explain how mandatory items can actually increase breakoffs and lower response quality. Most importantly, I'll discuss more respectful and effective alternatives that treat survey design as a conversation with respondents rather than an exam. Forcing questions means designing the questionnaire so that respondents cannot skip either some or all of the questions. The assumption is that by forcing questions, we can get better data because the data will be more complete. The problem is that forcing questions often results in worse data by increasing survey breakoffs, or the process of abandoning the survey partway through, or collecting poorer quality data for the questions that are forced. There are many reasons why forcing questions is a bad idea in general. For example, we don't want people to give us bad data, or we don't want people satisficing, which means that sometimes when people are forced to respond to a question, they might select an answer which we think we want to hear. Another reason is that we don't want people to drop out of a survey because they don't want to answer one of the questions. I mean, if somebody doesn't have a proper response option and they can't answer a question, they have several options, right? Like they could pick a wrong answer or they could just exit out of the survey altogether. So in general, we'll rather have a respondent complete the survey rather than having them to force to respond to every single question and then drop out halfway through. And then finally, we don't want to force questions because it may cause frustration and damage the perceived legitimacy of the survey. So even if you are paying respondents, for example, on a platform like Prolific, you still should not force questions. Often the assumption of the researcher is that if a respondent hasn't answered all the questions well, maybe they should just not get paid. But the truth is that if you want to get better data, you will not allow the respondents the choice to skip a question if they want to skip a question, if they feel the need to skip a question. Sometimes they may be uncomfortable about a question, or sometimes the response might not be one of the possible choices if the question, for example, is designed without complete exclusivity and exhaustivity. And this is why we shouldn't expect and we shouldn't force people to respond to all the questions. It should also be noted that forcing questions has an even stronger negative effect on open-ended questions when we're asking them to write a short open-ended answer or small essay. Instead of forcing responses to questions, it is recommended that you allow respondents to skip questions or offer don't know or prefer not to answer options or neutral option when appropriate. And furthermore, you want to introduce and phrase questions in a way that encourages responses rather than compelling them. This is the way that we ensure we get better data. Although it should be noted that there are cases where we do want to force questions, but they're more rare. And one of the cases is when the question is absolutely critical to the study. But here's the thing. Sometimes questions might be absolutely critical, such as when they are the dependent variable in a study, or if the question is used as an eligibility screening. But even when a question is absolutely critical, the lazy solution is to make it a required question. Some survey hosting platforms like Qualtrics or Google Forms even offer a soft nudge option, which gives a pop-up reminder for respondents for when they have not completed a question. But even this option is not desirable, given that the pop-up message itself often feels aggressive and intrusive. It's jarring. It also forces respondents to either look at which question they have to fill out. It creates an additional cognitive burden on the respondent. The elegant solution is to use display logic in your survey. On survey hosting platforms like Qualtrics, it is possible to program a question to display under certain conditions. So let's say you have a question that is absolutely critical to your research. On the next page, you have a follow-up question that only displays if the previous question was skipped. You can say something like, "It seems like you did not answer the previous question. Your response to this question is very important to us, and then you could display that question again. Something like that. The wording can be fixed. But the point is that you don't want to seem like you are forcing them to do anything. Designing a survey is about having a conversation with your respondent and working with them to get the best data possible. And you should respect your respondents. Just think of it this way. Imagine you're working at a store and you're asking customers for their thoughts about a new product. And this is all in person, face to face. But they don't answer one important question. Are you going to force them to answer that question? Or are you going to share with them that their response is important and ask them nicely to try answering the question again? So remember that a good survey requires a holistic approach. There are other things that help with easing dropout rates and ensuring better quality data. In order to produce the best possible survey, don't forget to think about all the aspects of survey design. And elements like not forcing responses to questions is just one part of the bigger picture.